with our regional partners. There's no way any one community can provide canines for itself and be self-sufficient. So we're looking to make sure that we're maintaining canines that assist in our program here, but also in the region. The expenditure that we are requesting for $4,250 is an estimate for the police canine. Currently, for us to go out and purchase a police canine, the maximum amount that we're being told is about that $8,500 window. I'm looking to take money from our asset forfeiture account to pay for the other portion of that dog. The asset forfeiture account in the state of Connecticut is money that is derived from generally drug-related arrests and crimes, vehicles that are seized and auctioned that come back into the town. There are requirements by state statute on how you can utilize that money. There is an 85% can be for enforcement, 15% for education. So there are some limitations to what they're used for. We generally utilize that for our drug testing kits, other drug-related investigative supplies that we may need. And the viewpoint that I'm having is the dog that we're looking to purchase right now is a tracking patrol dog, which would be cross-training narcotics. The mindset of asking for half and half of that would be derived from asset forfeiture, half the patrol function is what we're actually asking from you tonight to pay for that. The way that process would work is if we were approved to make this expenditure, then we would go out when we are ready to train a handler, search for a dog, and understanding that is very highly dependent on which canine supplier, kennel type situation has what we need at that time. We get the dog, we mend that with the handler, and then we find a training program. I'm able to do that when we have a full staffing and we have no staffing issues, which is, in the very near future, we're going to be okay with that. So again, I want to be ahead of the game, ask for the expenditure so we have the ability then to go out and find the proper canine to get this program and keep this program up and running.
The $8,500 is for the dog.
That's for the dog, correct.
The training that you talked about with the handler and the dog, that's a separate expense?
Correct. So currently we utilize, or we are a member of the Connecticut Police Work Dog Association. Mm-hmm. Our full intent is to utilize that training group as our training provider. There is no cost for that training. The cost is the officer's salary that we are paying. So any subsequent cost we're going to incur during training is really to replace that officer on overtime when they are in training. So that may be a couple days a week, and that would be coming from a training account inside of our police budget, which is currently there for training.
Okay. So the dog is quote unquote trained. The $8,500 you're buying.
Well, it's not necessarily trained. It is a dog that is fully vetted and tested, and obviously it's going to be a young animal, but they are running it through its paces. We are only going to purchase or get that dog from an organization, individual kennel that is pre-screening that dog to make sure it has the temperament and the abilities to perform the police functions it's going to have to perform.
Curious, how long does it take to train the dog?
Generally, depending on really the acumen of the dog and the handler, you are talking probably about a 6 to 10 week period. But again, it's highly dependent on how quickly that dog is picking up the training, the handler's abilities. So it's kind of a moving window. But the good thing is if we can do that training locally, it really cuts down on a lot of the other impacts. And there are ways sometimes to have the officer working shifts and also doing training at certain other points of time. So we're not completely losing that officer. If we send them to an organization, like say the State Police Academy, they do canine training there. That is a full time. There's no flexibility in that. It's it's a certain hours each and every day. So we enjoy the flexibility when we do training because it allows us some leeway.
Question, Chief. Is there a continuum of the training? I know there's the essential training, but
yes.
this doesn't end the story, so it must continue.
That's a great question. So anytime there's a police canine, there is a monthly training that dog undergoes.
Okay.
Currently, the 2 dogs that we had up until this point were part of that. They trained every week. That is part of the contractual benefit to that officers. That is all done in comp time or in lieu of shift.
Gotcha.
So
Okay.
we're not deriving a financial loss because of that. So that certainly factors into that. But the training is ongoing for the entire life or the career of that animal.
That's great. I have one question in that we've lost 2 canines?
Correct.
And we're just obtaining 1.
Right, so-
Are there plans to have a second one?
Yes, so what I'm looking to do is, because our staffing right now, I don't feel comfortable taking 2 officers off the road to
Right.
attend training. So I'm looking to kind of tier that, to say, we'll do 1 now, and then possibly in the next fiscal year, when that dog is up and running on the road, then go to that second canine. Still in the process of evaluating if we're gonna go with a lab that just straight drugs, such as the one that we just lost with Knox,
Right.
or if we go 2 patrol dogs that are cross-trained. So we're still in that process of trying to determine which is the best avenue for the town to go, but I firmly feel that the first one is going to be that cross-trained patrol dog.
Great, thank you.
You're welcome.
That's great.
What's the life of a dog after it's trained as far as being commissioned?
But both the canines that we just had,
Yeah.
both were trained initially at the same time. They both had a little over 8-year career with the
Yeah.
department. Unfortunately, if Gmo did not acquire cancer and had a very quick demise,
Yeah.
he would have worked maybe a year or 2 longer. Knox has had some physical issues with his hips and some physical mobility issues that made it very difficult for him to get around, so we had to retire him. But generally, I would say 8 years is a very safe window to say, and some canines can be more.
Is it typical that you use German Shepherds all the time?
Well, most of the departments now are going with Belgian Malinois. I can never say that word. I'm sorry. Over the German Shepherds.
Yeah.
But that's an evaluation when we try to find the proper dogs, or I shouldn't say when we enlist master trainers. That is their training to go find dogs and to train dogs.
Right.
So we rely on the experts to say, yes, this dog has the proper temperament and is the dog that you want. So it's a collaborative effort, but a Belgian is probably what we'll go with. However, I can't rule out a Shepherd if it was the right dog.
Right. Okay. Thank you.
No, you said the one dog is for drugs, and then you said the one is cross-training. What does the other dog do? Or what else can they do?
The cross-trained dog?
Drugs, yeah.
So the cross-trained dog is the typical shepherd you see. It is doing tracks for missing persons, bad guys. That is the one that is out there on the street. So say you had a bank robbery or you had a missing person. That's the one that's doing the scent article track of that individual. The lab, such as Knox that we just had, was strictly narcotics, so strictly trained to find, certain imprinted with 6 or 7 different drugs, and that's what they find, and that's it. They don't do tracking of people.
Okay, nobody has any questions, I'll go with mine. Chief, who manages the asset forfeiture fund?
It's done through the town budget.
So, but is it on the town books?
So,
Is it a CNRE?
no, this is set up, we actually have it in the general fund, and it sits on, it's like a balance sheet account. So we have 2 accounts that are linked to that balance sheet account. So when revenues come in, it credits, and then when we make expenditures, it debits. And
Okay.
so.
What is the balance of that account?
It's 18,000 and change-ish. I don't have the exact amount. Generally, and that money comes in from, again, cases that the court settles and provides us with the asset forfeiture, or vehicles that were seized that are provided to us, and then we end up selling, or Public Works sells that vehicle, and we take the money and put it into that account.
So, and I understand the uses of that fund because you've explained that. So we have full control of the funds in the town budget, but we get guidelines on how those funds can
Correct.
be used.
There's a state
Okay.
statute for asset forfeiture that dictates how
Okay.
it can be used.
All right, and this clearly is one of those uses.
Clearly,
To-
yes. 'Cause-
for the narcotics
and that's why
stuff.
I'm very comfortable
Yeah.
saying
Yeah.
narcotics, because half the dog being cross-trained would be for narcotics.
So I think it's good news that we haven't touched the contingency fund yet, and there's plenty of money in there, and I think that certainly you should have this dog sooner rather than later, since you've lost 2. But my question is, there are 23 officers on the force right now?
Yes, well, we're authorized at 24. So
Right.
we just in January.
Did you hire the 24th
Yes.
officer? And when is their start date? Did they start already?
Yes,
When was the start date? January 1st?
the 10th. We swore them in
Okay.
on the 10th.
So there's no savings there. I thought that there might be a delay in the hiring of that officer for a reason or two. So there isn't. So there's no savings there.
No.
Human cost savings, correct?
Right.
A week's worth of salary. Okay, all right. Just exploring the different fund sources that we could tap for this. Yeah, I mean, I'm okay with that. So you will get the second K-9 officer into the 2021 budget cycle?
Correct, yes.
Okay.
And that is something that we're working out and trying to get into that budget cycle, so, yes.
Mhm.
So that would not be unplanned,
Okay,
such as this.
yes. Okay, I don't have any other questions. Is everybody good, ready to vote on it? Okay, do I have a motion?
I'll move to appropriate and transfer $4,250 from contingency account 01-01-120-200-500 contingency to an account to be established titled Police K-9.
Second.
Okay, I have a motion, I have a second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion carries.
Thank you very much. Have a good
Thanks.
day.
Thanks, Chief.
Okay. With that, we'll move on to the appropriate and transfer $5,422 from contingency to increase HR manager position hours. So
You have a,
Anna has provided us with a job description for that. It is the existing job description. I don't know if there are changes to that, if in effect the actual position is going to change in nature. I'm thinking it's not.
Well, this is the most,
this is the
yeah,
updated
well,
job
this
description.
is the most recent one that we have. Based on the, it hasn't been amended relative to this request for the additional hours. As I did read through it, I did notice that it talks about, in the third paragraph under essential job functions, administers the town of East Lyme health plan, including review of ASO contract. Well, we don't have, I mean, that was the plan that we were in, which we were self-insured. But this July 1st, we went on the state plan, so that that really wouldn't apply anymore. However, the individual really is the point person for the administration of the health insurance. So, I mean, it's accurate to, to that particular point.
So I have a question in your, well, before I start though, did you want to add to that, Mark?
Well, we're looking to bring the human resource coordinator that we have on up to 30 hours, an extra 8 hours a week, is that?
10.
An extra 10 hours a week, right, 20 to 30. Probably the need exists to go full-time. We're exploring that in next year's budget, but right now going to 30 hours. I know Camille has spoken publicly on our need to have a more robust human resource coordinator. We'll make this a department head position, so she'll report directly to me. In the past, we've had full-time human resource coordinator of 37 and a half hours. That was cut maybe over 10 years ago, as we're always trying to bring down the numbers, but we're woefully short in our detail in this department, and there's a need. A lot of retirees, a lot of people coming on board. The onboarding is much more comprehensive nowadays. We're also keeping track of required OSHA requirements, the new sexual harassment requirements in the state of Connecticut. Someone has to track that. In the past, Anna was doing a little bit of that, cleaning some of that up. But frankly, she's an army of one, and has a lot on her plate. We need this desperately, and frankly, when her 20 hours runs out on Thursday mid-afternoon, we're always scratching our heads like, how are we going to survive until Tuesday when she comes back? So it's time to bring her in for a couple more hours a week, and we'd appreciate your support on this. I think we can afford it, and we probably can't afford not to have this properly covered.
I just have one quick
Yes, sir.
question. I was reviewing the Board of Selectmen meeting from January 8th, and he was talking about the Southeastern Council of Governments is going for a grant, a RIPIC grant, which would, it looks like they're asking for money for 3 different positions within the COG.
Correct.
Which would include the regional grant writer for 80,000, a regional building inspector, and the regional human sources staff consultant for 80,000.
Right.
And then it looks like if this goes forward, then Town of East Lyme could use those services for the first or second year for free, and then afterwards, it's just as we use them, then we would pay for it.
Correct.
So is there any way that we could use this human resource staff consultant?
So I wouldn't
instead of-
expect those people to be on board at least until the next fiscal year. We have immediate needs right now. So first of all, there's that. Second of all, there's 22 towns that would be sharing those
Yeah,
services.
yeah.
So I think it would be more broad, his or her use in that case. The human resources. I don't know how the COG is going to handle that, frankly, but. Dipping into town and spending an hour here, I'm not sure that's going to work. I'm not sure how they'll use the human resource coordinator, frankly. I just don't know. Maybe it'll be more broad as far as testing and certifications go and those kind of things. Or maybe coming out to towns and doing trainings on those kind of things. That might be the right way of doing it. Or keeping us up to date of statute and legislative moves as far as what employers need to do. We ask a lot of our human resources, and it's a broad term nowadays, right? So, but to answer the question shortly, at least July 1st, that person will be on. It might even be later than that, and of course, we're not even guaranteed we'll get the grant. Yeah.
So then I guess my other question is, this human resource person that you would just increase, you wouldn't be hiring someone new, you would just increase the hours?
We have a dynamo on board right now. We have a dynamic person who's got some background. She's fantastic at what she's doing, very thorough, very detail-oriented. Yes, we'd be adding on to her hours.
And she would be doing just the day-to-day human resource things for all the different
Yes,
employees?
everything you can imagine.
Okay. Thank you.
All set?
Yep.
Okay, I have a few questions. This is on the human resources position justification. Let me see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 paragraphs down. It says, during the past year, we have also dealt with several discipline issues which are time-consuming. Who is we? Is that the current HR coordinator that deals with those discipline issues?
The HR coordinator is usually coordinating, whether it's a grievance, a mediation, or an arbitration situation, but along with our labor attorney, along with a union representative, the employee, and myself, and the department head involved, right?
So that doesn't change. The person in this position is doing that currently.
Correct.
There is no change going forward. And hopefully there won't be more hours required for that. But certainly I understand the need to update the handbook. When I looked at it, I think it was dated 2003. I did hear a pretty significant change in that currently this human resource coordinator reports to the finance director, and I think I just heard you say that that would change and this HR coordinator would report directly to you?
Correct.
So that's a pretty significant change.
Can I comment
Yeah,
on that?
Sure.
Okay. So, when the position was first established in 2007, it was set up in its own department, so it was Department 106. So when the change from the HR position going from full-time to reducing the hours, that's when the position moved over to the Department of Finance. And along with that, when the hours were reduced, it went from a 37.5-hour position a week to 28 hours a week. The 28 hours a week included both HR functions along with doing our bank account reconciliations. And that kind of all fit together, because at the time in the finance department, we had an employee that did the bank reconciliations, and she worked from 8 to 12 hours a week. It kind of depended on the cycle of the work, flow. And so that's why the position was kind of combined, and it came over to the finance budget, and we eliminated Department 106. So what we will do, if this gets approved this evening, that's what we will do. We'll remove it from the finance department budget in next year's budget and establish it as its own
independent
yeah.
department. So I think that's a pretty significant change. So I am in favor of a full-time human resources director, somebody at a level that can handle these very weighty type of issues. Another piece of information I think I asked for, I don't really see it here, is if we go to 20 hours to 30 hours, what will be the work week? Will it have coverage over the 5-day work week?
So the way that we're going to do it is have it be regular full-time business hours Monday through Thursday, and that'll be the 30 hours, because we work 7.5 hours. 7.5 hours is the normal day. So rather than having short days, we think it makes more sense to make it be here the full day, because oftentimes when employee, like especially the maintenance workers, they tend to come in when they finish their work at the end of the day, and that's between 3:30 and 4.
Okay, so currently the schedule is Tuesday through Thursday. You're proposing Monday through Thursday, going from 20 to 30. I guess my feeling on this is I think this is a pretty significant position, and I think because it's changing, is there a process in place to post the job to see if there is anybody, isn't that the correct HR process to take, is to post a job as it changes significantly in its nature?
I don't think it's changing in its nature. We're just giving her more hours to do the work. The responsibilities will stay the same, first of all, and second of all, it's an unaffiliated position, so we're not required to post. We have someone who's very, very capable and competent. She spent a lot of time learning our process too, so we would not want to lose that built-in knowledge that we've already gained.
Have you worked on this part of the budget for 2021 to include 40 hours per week with this position?
I have to go back and look. There's a lot of things we'd like. There's a lot of need, but in the end, the budget's going to be heavy. So we're going to look at it. We're going to also see how she adapts into the 30 hours a week and see if it's necessary to expand that.
So we are, 7 months into the budget cycle. I mean, I would prefer to see this position full-time worked into the 2021 budget going forward, and I would wholeheartedly support that. I'm not sure I'm ready to support 20 hours going to 30 based on the information in front of me tonight.
Can I make a few other comments? So one of the things noted in the narrative is we've had some turnover in positions, which for the longest time we were just stagnant, like everybody was just staying, but we've started to see people retiring now. And so one of the things that our incumbent did, especially like with new hires, is just kind of like professionally organized how we present all of the documentation that you would normally present to a new hire, as well as like recently, when we hired the new fire marshal, dealing with the background investigation, we didn't really have anything in place for this in terms of how we did it. So, when we discussed it, I suggested she reach out to Waterford because they actually have an HR department, and gave her information on an agency to contact, and so now we went through the vetting process with them, and now we're set up so that when we hire new employees, we can, get proper background investigations done for them. So she's made some, I think, some positive improvements relative to the professionalism of the department. And then also, I mentioned how on July 1st of this year, we changed from our old health insurance model and went on to the state of Connecticut plan. Well, guess what? We were just notified that the state of Connecticut is now going from Oxford Health managing the health care to Anthem. So what that means is, come this July 1st, we're going to have to go through that all over again. All of our employees will be receiving new insurance cards. In addition to that, before July 1st, we're going to have to set up a series of education meetings to go over all of how this change is going to work with the new plan. And that's a large, that's a large time-consuming process. And then an additional thing Mr. Nickerson already mentioned is our training. So we're required to do certain trainings through OSHA, and there was a public act passed where we have to, all of our employees, and it's a date in October, have to have sexual harassment training. So next week we're having 2 sessions, but we have to have all full-time, all part-time, all seasonal employees, anyone that works for the town. So that's going to be an ongoing process because we have Parks and Rec seasonal employees. So we're going to have to figure out how to get them trained before, when they come back to us in the spring. We also have several part-time firefighters in both of our fire departments, and we have part-time dispatchers. So there's going to be like several ongoing trainings that we're going to need to have in order to, to make this happen. And then generally speaking, with all of the training, the coordination and managing of that has kind of been somewhat haphazard over the years. We do have a health and safety committee. They have, tried to coordinate us having training every year, but someone still needs to be a central repository for that. And so we, that's another, another thing that the HR manager would be able to, handle.
A couple. How many town employees are there?
I think we have about 123, 125 like regular base employees,
Right,
but
so
then we
I-
have,
A lot of part-time.
Yeah,
in
yeah.
addition to that, it's the part-timers, and then
So that's not that's not full-time, 120 full-time equivalent. It is
We have 100
125 bodies.
well, 100 more or less.
Less than that FTEs.
That would be like the 125 is what our base full-time employees
Okay,
are. yeah.
Okay. So, Camille, it's interesting because I like the idea that it's a conservative step up rather than jumping to a full-time. I think if I was in Mark Nickerson's shoes, I'd be banging the table looking for a full-time human resources person.
yeah,
And,
no.
and I think that given what we got for budget challenges coming up, I'm happy that they're coming up with a conservative, with a conservative thing. At 100, you certainly with 120 employees, you can justify a full-time.
Her workload justifies it.
Yeah.
We have an immediate need right now.
Right, but
We're
I
kinda
think the
drowning
30
in it.
hours is a conservative request, and.
Right, and I understand your point, and I agree, except for the fact that I think it's probably time to do a full organizational review. Are there other areas in the town hall where maybe there's some excess capacity so that we could get to a flat budget?
Mhm.
So we could boost this person to a full-time HR director, but pay for it through savings in other areas.
So to
And
answer your
so-
question, very simply, there isn't any other cuts in the town hall. You'll be asked to put on another building inspector, our building inspections. As you see, our revenue has soared, so has our inspections soared because of that. We're gonna have a request for that. We're gonna have a request for more clerical within that department who supports 4 different departments. We need more additional hours to support Karen and Jen downstairs. Very simply, we're not getting, the customers are coming in, paying their fees, paying their permit fees, and not getting satisfaction because it's taking over 30 days. It shouldn't take 4 days, but we don't have enough bodies. We don't have anybody in town hall that we could cut to justify putting somebody else on somewhere else. We've cut and cut and cut. We're now showing we're not delivering on the promises to the taxpayer and the fee holders and the fee payers of the services that they would come to expect. And we obviously owe it to our employees and to the town, to you, to make sure that we're crossing our T's, dotting our I's, especially when it comes to the very litigious nature of employer versus employee and all that goes into HR. So we would like to add this 10 hours on, and we'll be looking most likely to add another 7.5 hours on in the coming year.
Would you entertain postponing this and working with me to take a look at the organization and just see if there's any additional efficiencies that could be identified?
I can sit down with you during the budget process. We'll go through everybody that works in this building. You can do a head count. In the meantime, we have an immediate need for a human resources coordinator position to increase 10 hours. I urge you to support that.
Okay.
One question in regards to, initially you mentioned come Friday, you guys are really needing the additional support, that it's hard to wait till Tuesday. I'm wondering if there could be a modification in the schedule that Anna had suggested, that maybe instead of the 7.5 hours, 4 days a week, that it'd be 6.5 and have a half day on Friday, so in case there are those needs that occur on a Friday.
So right now, the work week is Tuesday and Wednesday, 8 to 4, and on Thursday from 8 to 1. So I think having the HR manager here on Monday is will be a big change. And then
Okay.
having the individual here all day on Thursdays as well, and work with that. A lot of times on Fridays, a lot of employees tend to take Fridays
Oh,
off.
okay.
So, the needs are greater Monday through Thursday.
Okay,
So
that's
I would
understandable.
So you certainly could go to a Monday, Wednesday, Thursday work week to make sure that the employee was here on Monday.
We'll work with her and her schedule and see what we can do.
No, that sounds fine, Anna. Thank you.
One question, Anna. You're going from a manager position to somebody called a department head. Is there any changes in benefits or salary because you have a different title?
So first of all, it's a non-affiliated position, so all of that is with non-affiliated. So in terms of, being non-affiliated, that stays the same. So the department head is, that's more, taking her out of the finance department and making her own independent department, so to speak.
But her salary stays the same
Yes.
except for the increase of 10 hours.
There's no contractual obligation for us to
Yeah.
increase her
Okay.
pay, or she doesn't get steps, or any of those kind of things,
Yeah.
because of it. And good question, because if this was the Public Works Department, it would be different. Someone
Yep.
working within, say, a union, it would be different, moving someone from
Yeah.
a supervisor to a foreman position.
Okay.
So would this, just one more question, would this human resource person also be doing the staff accounting? The 8 hours, or is that
No,
something, that's a
no.
different position?
So what happened is when the position was 28 hours, the employee that was doing that really wanted to, you know, get into a semi-retirement mode, but was still interested in doing the bank reconciliations and the tax reconciliations. And so, you know, human resources and like accounting, if you will, to have someone do those two types of work, you're not always going to find someone to make it work. So that's when we made the separation, and looking at the previous employee that did the bank reconciliation, she worked 8 to 12 hours a week. So we said, all right, the position will be 8 hours a week, and it's been working fine with the 8 hours per week for us with that. So it's just strictly the HR related functions, the duties related to that.
Thank you.
Any other questions on the increase in hour request?
I don't have a question, but just a comment. I see your point, Camille, in the long haul, but I do like this, like Pete, I do like this incremental approach because there is an immediate need, and I'm particularly concerned about any liabilities of the town. The problems are increasing in number. There are more issues, and people are more suit happy, if you will, and so I do think that there's definitely a need, and I think it's to me very thoughtful at this point to an intelligent decision to go ahead and just increase those hours. And it sounds like not just right now, but within the last year since the human resources manager came on in January of 2019, we've been just hearing good things. So I think this is a person you'd like to work with and give her the ability, the opportunity to not be running around crazy or putting in hours for which she is not paid, that kind of thing. So, I think this is a smart choice at the moment, and it's something that could be looked at for full-time or down the road. I am worried about what happens with, disgruntled employees. There are so many possibilities of lawsuits. So this, I think, helps tremendously. And all the training that is now required for even the smallest and tiniest of businesses as well, so beside the town. So I think you need someone at the helm, as Anna suggested, coordinating all of these educational programs and keeping current with state statutes. So, yeah, I'm feeling positive about this.
Okay. Sorry,
Yeah.
one more question. This person who is a human resource, who you have now, they have a background in doing human resource, like a educational background? It wasn't somebody who was just who worked there and kind of learned through time? Do they have an education?
She did have, when we did the interviews, she did come out with having the proper background. And since she's been here, I can say that she's truly demonstrated that.
Okay.
So does she have the educational background? I think was the question.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know what? I really would have to say I'd have to go back and look at, the job application at this point to refresh my memory of what her specific
Qualifications?
backgrounds were. Yes.
Okay.
We posted the job, just to add on to that, we posted the job, we had several applicants for the job, correct? And she
Yes.
did
Going-
rise as our first choice.
Mhm. No, I have heard nothing but good things about this individual. This decision that I make tonight, again, is not based on the person. It's based on, and I do think we need a full-time human resources director, somebody of the caliber that can handle these responsibilities that you've outlined and then some. So I just am leery about throwing some extra hours out to try to correct a problem when we haven't taken a more comprehensive approach to solving the issues. So, I mean, I am in favor of a full-time human resources director. I hope that we see that in the next budget cycle. I completely understand and appreciate if the rest of my colleagues don't agree with me. That's fine, but that's where I stand. So if there are no further comments, we'll take a vote.
Make a motion.
We need a motion.
Oh, yes, we do. All right, is there a motion?
Yes, I'll do it.
Okay.
Move to appropriate and transfer $5,422 from account 010112020050 contingency to account 01011181000212 HR coordinator/manager. In addition, establish HR coordinator/manager position as a department head, and as such, report directly to the first selectman.
I'll second it.
Okay, I have a motion and a second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Nay. Motion carries 510. Next up, we have wage contingency transfer police $67,753.
Pardon?
Do I do this?
Sure, I can. Okay, so,
It's this one.
earlier in the meeting, I had commented on how we typically budget for 2 contingency accounts. So the last 3 transfers that will come before you this evening are relative to the wage transfer. So the police contract was not resolved when we had worked on the budget last year, so we set aside funds in the, in a wage contingency to make up the difference. Now, for this particular department, what I did when I coming up with the proposed amount is I looked at, okay, what have we expended fiscal year to date? What are our monthly payroll obligations? And so how do we get to the end of the year? And that's how I came up with what the request is relative to the salary account, the $64,800. And then the remaining portion is for the overtime account.
Any questions from the board?
I had a question, Anna, about the agreement going back to, it seems that it's a bit retroactive to 7/1/18.
Of course. Oh,
Yes,
yes.
yes,
Oh, this
okay.
was.
Right,
Oh,
which,
yes,
because
this
you had
was-
no agreement during that time, okay.
Correct, yeah.
So, that 64,800, is covering the 2-year period, is that correct?
Yes.
Yes, okay.
Okay, but there's, so this year, because, so some of the factors that, came into calculating this were when we had a longtime employee take retirement, so when we hired someone new, it was at a lower salary.
Okay,
So that was
okay.
all taken
Yeah.
into
I
consideration.
know, I could not duplicate your your end result here, your calculation.
Right.
But I was trying to, but
Right, and-
without that information, I couldn't do it,
Yeah,
okay.
And that's kind of what,
Okay.
makes it a little odd. It wasn't like the perfect calculation.
Okay, gotcha. Okay.
I just have a general comment about the text in these appropriation requests. I mean, I think that we're confusing the Board of Selectmen with the Board of Finance in the language. So I don't know if that matters to be corrected.
Oh, so really.
But I think that the board should note that, for
Right.
example,
The date the contracts were adopted.
Yeah, because
Right.
we didn't.
So what happens is, when these go to the Board of Selectmen, after the Board of Selectmen approve them, then, the executive assistant really just changes the motion at the bottom and that it's going to the Board of Finance from the Board of Selectmen. These don't totally get redone over. It's that portion that's,
Well, it should be though, is my point, because
Okay.
this request is to the Board of Finance, so obviously that's a change. So we should take care to make the change in the text. So for example, the successor agreement, 7/1 to 6/30, was approved by your
right.
May 1st
We'll work
meeting.
on that. We'll
So-
work on that. I hear you.
It's not us, it's the Board of Selectmen, because that was their meeting on May 1st. And the same with the other text, Board of Selectmen meeting on June 19th, you approved, it's really they,
Right.
so you get the drift.
I understand.
It's
We'll work
just
on that.
very confusing
I
when you're reading.
understand.
Okay, good. If there are no other questions, can I have a motion?
Guess it's my turn.
Sure.
Go ahead.
Motion to appropriate and transfer 67,500,